All right, let's start off by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Racha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. This is just basically a random thoughts, dated June 10th, 2025, the hopeful year of our deliverance and the destruction and judgment of Esau. And pretty much, just a couple of things that I've been pondering on last few days or so, maybe a little longer on certain things. And I'll try to speak as scripturally as possible. I don't have any scriptures with me that I could read from. Brothers put anything on the comment board that pertains to the subject. I could read off of that. But nevertheless, one thing I just wanted to address was with the brother, the elder Kanak. You brothers out there that are receiving help from the brother, helping you put protocols together, sending you tinctures and helping you with your health. Make sure you take care of that brother financially. Don't just put him on the back burner, because that brother could use the help. And I've seen the man in action for the last 4 months, and he's very passionate about what he does, and he puts his whole heart into it. To make sure he gets these packages out, and that shit ain't cheap. The brother, he puts his heart into it. And I told him he has to be a little bit more, more forceful, on brothers, as far as to, give them something, to help them out. I know, brothers, running, in hard times or, are pretty much, in a jam, financial bind or whatever the case may be. That's a different story. The brother will work with you, but, this is just coming from me. You brothers should, make it your business to help that brother out. He's helping you. You should take care of him financially. He's a physician. The scriptures speak about honoring a physician, which means you come to him when he has, when you have certain issues, health-wise, that's how you honor him, by going to the face of the physician, inquiring and, getting the information you need, but also, giving him, the funds that he needs to help him out, because he has a life too. He has to pay bills. He has to, just like anybody else, you got to put gas in the car. You got to pay his bills. You got to, you got the family you got to take care of, so on and so forth. So you brothers out there that's receiving the brother services, don't forget, to take care of that brother. And just like I said, these are just things that have been rolling around my head. That one in particular has been on my mind for about a couple of weeks now. Maybe a little longer than that. Just constantly hammering, in my head. So I wanted to commit that to videos. Seeing brothers watch, these videos could pass the, information around. Another thing that's been on my spirit too is, the bishops in Connecticut. Don't forget about them. Because they've been putting in work too. They've been holding the fort down. Giving it their all, their dedication, their time, effort, body, soul and mind to this truth too, So don't forget about them. You got the apostles, you got the camp leaders and all that, but you got the bishops also, they've been on the front line, back there, from the beginning too. So don't forget to give them their due honor, that they deserve, because they'll fall, they'll stay in the background. They won't really say much. They won't complain. They won't bitch, about it. But I'm mentioning it because, like I said, it's been on my spirit to talk about it. Scriptures speak about, giving double honors to your elders. They are elders, and they are worthy of the double honors. And they've been out in the trenches, for years, and them bishops still working, still got to go to 9 to 5s or Some brothers got businesses that they still got to go to, so they still out there grinding, so don't forget, to give them their due, and like I said, this is just stuff that's been on my spirit that I wanted to talk about. Those are two of the main things, and whatever else the Spirit feeds me to feed you, I will. The scriptures speak about, giving honors to those, especially they of the household of faith, something along those lines. I don't recall exactly how it's worded. I believe it's in the book of Peter. It could be either Peter or Timothy, where it says, to give, the believing elders, their due, especially they who labor in the household of faith, or something along those lines. So don't forget to do that, and also, of course, your camp leaders, the men that are in your camp, make sure you give, and giving honors is not just, hey, shalom, hey, double honor. No, it's your actions too. If you have a camp leader or camp leaders that are, being good examples to the flock, and out there showing you how it's done on the front lines, and they tell you to do things because they see, that you need to tighten up in certain areas, or you need to, deal with this situation, or they see, they're directing you in the right direction. But then if you don't do the things that they tell you to do, then it doesn't fall on them, it falls on you, because they're seeing if there's something going astray, or they're seeing where something needs to be strengthened, and they're speaking up on it and touching on it, and if you're not fulfilling your duty, then you're not honoring them by doing that. So all that double honors pretty much is caca, because the scriptures speak about not loving in words but in deeds, and the deeds is really what what shows whether you have that honor or not. It's by the things that you do, not by what you say. Anybody can say anything, and I'm not saying that that for any specific camp that I'm saying this, so I'm just saying this in the spirit. It's on my spirit to say, so I'm going to say it, so make sure that if you have believing elders, camp leaders that are telling you to do the right thing in the camp, make sure you follow those orders. Make sure you follow what they tell you to do, so things can stay in order, because at the same token, you that are under these camp leaders, you're learning to become a leader also. And when you become a leader, you're going to have men under you, and you're going to want them to respect you. So how can you get respect when you don't show respect, or you don't give respect? You have to be able to give respect in order to receive it. So make sure that if you're going to honor in deeds. All that talk, this, double honor is this, double honor is that, but you ain't doing what you're supposed to be doing. That's why when we hear, yeah, it's cool, but to us, really, right now, it's just a mantra. It's just something that brothers got to say at the beginning of their videos. And really, if you don't really mean it, don't say it. If you don't mean it, don't say it. Hey, the Lord wants obedience, rather than sacrifice. Obedience is the key. You want to show, love or deeds or whatever the case may be. Let it be done, by your actions, not by your words, because faith without works is dead. Apostle James spoke about that. Faith without works is dead. So if you're just out there, just talking, but you ain't walking, then pretty much you're no different than a hypocrite. So like I said, that's just something that just popped in my head just now. So I just wanted to speak on it. And if you happen to fall in that category, repent, and do the right thing. Because we're coming to some very serious times where great persecution is arising, which you could even see it right now happening out there in LA. But you have protests going all over, from what I understand, you got protests all over the United States. You know, but it's just that LA right now is the one that's on fire. You know, so I was just watching a little bit of my man Donut, and pretty much, you know, he said he was sharing this video of this footage of the LA riots, and he showed one with Godzilla in it, right? There was an explosion, and then Godzilla came out the explosion, and he said, I shared this with some of my viewers, and I lost hundreds of viewers, and so on and so forth. And in my mind, I'm like, is this guy fucking with people or what? I said, because I was like, in my mind, I said, yo, I said, Donut, man, you can't see that shit is AI shit, you know? But then he came back later and said, you know, it was AI, which I already knew. But I did say that Godzilla is real. You know, in the scriptures it's called Behemoth, which are the dinosaurs. You know, and the dinosaurs are still around. You know, we just don't know where. The Lord got him somewhere. You know, he got him somewhere, you know, corralled somewhere, you know, I don't know, maybe underground. Wherever he got him at, they're still around. Another one is Leviathan. Leviathan is the sea serpent, the sea monster. You know, and he's also, you know, in the oceans out there. And there's more than just one Leviathan. You know, because that was created when man was created also. You know, you had the whales, you know, you had the fish and all that, creeping things and the birds, but you also had sea monsters. When you look up that word, you know, in I forget which word, living creatures I think it is, in the book of Genesis, the first chapter, it goes into sea monsters. You know, so it got me to thinking too about this AI, because remember the scriptures say that knowledge shall increase. So, you know, the technology that they have now, and brothers have been speaking about it, you know, they can create a content and they can incriminate somebody, you know, and have somebody do something and then replace that person with somebody else, and they'll blame it on that individual. You know, and the thing with the AI and the technology is it gets better and better with time. You know, so that's pretty much what they're doing. They're perfecting it. So where there's going to come a point where you're not going to be able to tell what's real from what's fake. You know, that's why it's important right now to lock in to what you know, have been taught and hold on to that. Because you have guys out there that's losing faith, guys out there that's, you know, that's leaving or whatever the case may be. You know, guys that may be, you know, on the fence, you know, I don't know, I've been doing this thing for 5 years, 10 years, and, you know, I don't really see nothing happening. Well, that's because you're not locked in the spirit. You know, if you're locked in the spirit, you can see a lot of things happening. You know, you can see the tension mounting. You can see prophecies popping off everywhere. You can see the stage being set for the great time of this testing, as the scriptures call it. You know, in Revelation 3 and 10, in the NLT, which Elder Pastor R brought that out a while back. You know, so you see that tension rising up. And I did a lesson the other day dealing with those riots and dealing with the fact that Issachar is out there, the so-called one of the Northern Kingdom, Latin tribes, is out there, you know, catching it and pushing, you know, this rioting stuff, because Esau is setting the stage for all of the tribes to get persecuted. You know, so they got so-called dirt on all of the tribes. You know, and then there was this one Jake that was, I'm not sure if that was on YouTube or Instagram, one of them social media platforms, and pretty much he was saying how Issachar down there in LA are you know, crying because they're asking where's Judah at? You know, where's Judah at? Where they at? You know, where's their voice at, you know, to come down and speak for us? But like he said, you know, them southern Mexicans, they be beefing with Judah down there. They be, you know, they have different derogatory terms for Jake, you know, call themselves, you know, ninja killers, so on and so forth, you know. But the thing about it, that Jake that said that, which is beautiful, you know, he was on point. And what he said, though, he said, you know, that they fuck, you know, with the Norteños, the ones up in the north, because he said they fuck with Judah. It's just the ones in the South. But then you want Judah to come to your aid when you're in a jam, you know. And like I said, I looked at that from the lens of Jacob's trouble, because Jacob's trouble is not Judah's trouble; it's all of the tribes' trouble. You know, so all of the tribes are going to be affected, you know, when this whole shit goes down. You know, they got, you know, I'm not sure if they, because I know they had said they deployed like 700 National Guard. I don't know if they got there yet, or if it, you know, if it's actually taking place just yet. You know, but things are ramping up, and you got Trump fighting against, you know, Gavin Newsom, which he calls New Scum. I believe he's the one that called him New Scum. You know, and they got a beef as to, they're saying, well, look, the FBI here is saying they never called for any help. They don't need the help. But Trump is saying that they need it. We're sending it, blah, 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 whatever. You know, so basically it's just a big ball of confusion going on, because this is what the elite want. They have a Latin term called ordo ab chaos, which means order out of chaos. You know, and this is what's going to push prophecy in the scriptures to a higher level. You know, the time of Jacob's trouble. You know, the pretty much, you know, the different groups out there fighting against the police, fighting against the military, you know, fighting against their politicians and their rulers and mayors and stuff like that. They're not going to, you know, listen, because, you know, one thing that people are being reminded of today is all of the many years that politicians have pretty much promised how things were going to get better, and they never got better. It always got worse. You know, like they'll promise them the sun, the moon, and the stars, but then, you know, when it comes to deliver, once they get in office, they never deliver. You know, they never deliver. You know, on what they actually, you know, they never deliver on what they actually said they would. You know. So just give me a second. It's crossing over here. You know, so they're seeing that it's a waste of time. You know, it's a waste of time to vote. It's a waste of time to hope. It's a waste of time to wait on these corrupt politicians, you know, to make their life better. So they're seeing that they're going to have to eventually take things into their own hands, you know, and, you know, this is building up a lot of tension, you know, because these people, even though they're bugged out, they don't know what the hell is going on, they know, they could feel that something is wrong, you know, and they could actually, you know, feel the tension and the rope being tightened around their neck. You know, actually feel, you know, you got all the videos, you know, on catching hell, you know, financially. You know, I mean, Jake is doing it too, but not on the level that Esau's doing it, because Jake is accustomed and used to, you know, catching hell like that. You know, Jake has been known to, you know, just, you know, be in a situation and just deal with it. You know, find a way around, you know, just maneuver around it, you know, as we've always done. But Esau's not built like that, because they've been used to having it good. You know, so between Esau and Jake, you know, and different other factions, you know, people's out here in America, you know, they're seeing, you know, this whole system collapsing, you know, and they're seeing that, nope, the government ain't gonna help, you know, the military ain't gonna help, the police ain't gonna help, you know, nobody's doing nothing, you know, all type of crimes going on, and the police are not helping, you know, and even out there in Mario, England, brothers call the cops, you know, on vocab, they didn't show up till like more than an hour and some change later, you know, so it's a whole lot of bullshit going on. So people, you know, are really seeing the effects of, you know, what we've been saying for a long time, that the government ain't for you. They're not here to help you. You know, they're just here to do the bidding of the banking elites that run the corporations of this world that are called governments. You know, they're the ones that's calling the shots behind the scenes, because they got the money. and they influence, the politicians that pass these different legislations that benefit them more than they benefit the people. But then when they get up there, it's all about helping the people. We're going to cut taxes. We're going to do this. You're going to have better education. You're going to have better health care. You're going to have better this. You're going to have better that. And then when they get in office, guess what? You don't get shit. So people are tired of that same, rat race of hope. Chasing that rat race of hope that that these politicians have that pipe dream that they've been selling, all their life. So these people are tired of that shit, So, that great persecution is coming, and the more this technology advances, the more the persecution is going to ramp up. The movie, it was an Arnold Schwarzenegger. What movie was that? Was that Commando? I can't remember the exact movie. No, it was Running Man. The movie Running Man. 1986, I believe it came out. They gave him an order to shoot innocent civilians, and then and he told them to go screw themselves. He wasn't going to shoot innocent people. But then what they did was they did telling him to abort, so on and so forth. This is what's coming. The false accusations. The straight up lies. Because Esau, he can't win, when it comes to the truth game. So they got to come with lies and deception. And that's why scriptures say, we are not ignorant of Satan's devices. But we know how they operate. We know where they're coming from. We've had our eyes on them, and we still got our eyes on them. We don't trust anything they say. Every time they come with some bullshit, we see right through them. Even though they seem to be so benevolent. We can see right through them. We see that they're the devil, like Vocab. When he came up to different brothers, he's trying to act like he's, this benevolent fellow. That dude is a straight up demon, devil from the lowest pits of hell. All right? Which there's no such thing as hell. But it seemed like the right thing to say at the time. So that dude is a straight up devil. So we see right through these devils. The scriptures say, Lord's will we be the elect. The Lord said that if it were possible, they would deceive the very elect. But it's just not possible. As long as the spirit of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua is upon us, and we continue to do things that are pleasing to the Lord to the best of our ability, he's going to continue to guide us spiritually and mentally, in this walk that we're walking in. So pretty much you have, keep eyes peeled, keep sharp. Don't be, surprised. Oh man, they said that I said this. I didn't say that. Bro, we've been talking about it. We've been saying that they were going to demonize us. They've been demonizing us for years. But now they finally got the technology, to try to, because they can't find anything, on their own, just finding anything. So what they do is they make it up. This is how they justify, making their moves, because they know that we're a truth group, but they'll paint us as a hate group, an extremist group, or whatever the case may be that tries to make us look bad. But at the end of the day, it's not going to work, because when you roll, the Lord knows, the scriptures say the Lord knows how to deliver the righteous out of temptation, something along those lines, You, like when they try to bring charge on the prophet Daniel, they brought charges on him. There's nothing he could do. So what happened? They threw him in the lions, and the Lord justified him. Same thing with the three holy children, Azariah, Hananiah, and Mishael. They threw them in the fiery furnace, so much so that it was burning 7 times more than it normally did. And on top of that, you had to have strong men to bind them, to throw them into the oven, and those men perished, throwing them into the oven. But they didn't. Not even a smell of smoke came upon them. Why? Because they were innocent. Joseph, when he was thrown in prison, he was accused of rape, which he didn't do. He was doing the right thing. He was trying to get away from her. He even told the Pharaoh's wife that, look, I'm talking to your husband, there's nothing he's withheld from me except for you, and that's because you're his wife. That wasn't right, you know. And then when she tried to get him to do it, he ran away, and she pulled his coat off, I think it was, and or mantle coat or something like that. And then she said that he tried to rape her, and they threw him in prison. But what happened? That whole trial that he went through turned to his benefit, because eventually, you know, he was brought, you know, to recognition among the Pharaoh, you know, and he ended up becoming, you know, the second in command, you know, underneath the Pharaoh. You know, just to show you, you know, how these trials and tribulations and these false accusations and false witnesses will turn, you know, to the righteousness, you know, and deliverance of the elect, the man of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. You know, so just keep your eyes peeled. You know what's going on. You know, when brothers out there in the camps, you know, just keep sharp. You know, make everything scriptural. No ad hominem attacks, no attacks on people. No, you know, just stay in them scriptures. And pretty much, you know, those of you brothers that are, you know, in spots where you have to speak a little later because, you know, brothers are working, whatever. You know, once the sun goes down, you know, get the fuck out of there. You know, because it's getting worse and worse everywhere you go. You know, like Elder Pastor said, you know, by the time the sun goes down, brothers should be the fuck out of the areas where they're at, you know. And, you know, pretty much that's it. You know, just stay prayed up, you know. Keep looking, because, you know, we almost out this bitch. You know, Lord's will, you know, they do something drastic for the next 6 months, you know, coming up the rest of this year, you know, so it can push this MOTB to the max. Because once that's pushed, that's it. You know, that's like the linchpin. You know, like you have the pin that holds it. The grenade is not going to explode unless you pull the pin, you know, and release the lever, you know. So hopefully that'll be the thing that pulls pin out of the grenade and allows it to, you know, to allow the prophecies to take hold of this place, especially the one with the MOTB, which is a micro C-hip. That way, you know, everything can start speeding up and moving faster and faster. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say, Shalom.